for the Fairgrounds Road utility improvements.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I will go ahead and call Mr. Ball up. He's going to fill us in on the details of the Fairgrounds Road utility improvements.
Great. If you want a map, we'll have to get the mayor to do it.
I'm sorry. What's that?
If we want a map, we can bring it back up on the screen. But so the Fairgrounds Road, a little bit of background. The 2003 utility master plan that was commissioned by Safety Service Director Daniels strongly suggested a water line on Fairgrounds Road. We don't have one there. We have a water line to the main gate of, well, the east gate of the fairgrounds, because they had a water contamination issue many years ago and had to get onto city water to have drinkable water. So in 2016, we kind of picked this back up and reevaluated the plan from 2003. Yeah, that'll work. And we did some simulations. So if you live in Mel's house and we have a water line break, you lose the water out of your water heater, you lose pressure. The other thing, if we have to open a fire hydrant for any reason in Mel's neighborhood or in that end of town, the fire hydrant doesn't meet the standard of 500 gallons per minute. At most, we get about somewhere between 355 and 475, depending on how far up the hill you are. And then if we do that, also sucks the water out of Mel's water heater too. So, and also causes some breaks in the line because we're kind of on a, if you look at the longitude, which is this nice shape here, that is also uphill. So
Big hill.
the water line ends here at the gate. We have the highest water pressure of any fire hydrant in the system right here at the gate at 99 PSI. And the goal is to construct a transmission main. So this is very important. We're classifying this as a transmission main. So we've talked to the neighbors, we've talked to the township trustees. Folks that are out here are very happy with their well water, with their septic tanks. The people that need to be hooked up because of contamination, aka the fairgrounds itself and the academy, are already connected to water. So we do want to, and I didn't get a chance to check that, but I think Rob included that language in the
Which language?
that this transmission main
I don't know that
is
but
required.
it's not required, but that's the way the Utility Commission plans on classifying it for purposes of people having to connect.
Right. So, you know, in other places we have the discussion about the service availability fees. So by classifying this as a transmission line, we would not be charging those. So like the line that goes to Gambier, the people that live next to that are not charged service availability fees. The other thing we're doing is a partial sanitary extension. We've been doing a lot of work to deal with the overflow issues at the Clinton Road pump station. While we have everything tore up, we're going to extend the sanitary sewer that ends at the racehorse barn up to the top of the hill. And the purpose of that is if we have to install a pump station, a new pump station in the Clintonville neighborhood, latitude, longitude, Fern, Grange, Clinton Road, we would pump the sewage back to the east to that area. So it's a little bit of prospecting and a little bit of preparation. We're not planning to do that right now, but depending on how growth goes, that's what we want to do. The other part of this is a joint project. So this project is a joint project with the county commissioners and the county engineer. So if you've been to the fairgrounds around the racehorse barns and the track, there's a pretty good water issue on that half of the fairgrounds coming off of Fairgrounds Road. So about $100,000 of this will be county stormwater project. And then while we're there, we're going to resurface the road. So we're going to fix the areas that we've torn up related to the utility project, and they're going to kick in another approximately 150 some thousand to get the road resurfaced. This is a Ohio Public Works Commission project, so the last year, council would have approved us applying for that grant. And then the Knox County Commissioners have pitched in $750,000 of ARPA funds. The other thing is this is under the city county water contract and the city county sewer contract. So if you live in a township that's not Clinton Township, you pay a 15% surcharge to these funds, and then Mr. Scott, we can request the funds for a project. So very similar years ago, Cameron had requested funds to extend the water line to the gate of the fairgrounds. This fund, builds up. It's on deposit with the county. So we will be requesting county water and sewer funds toward this project. And then we'll have the OPWC money. So at the end of the day, it's about a little over $2.2 million project, but it's coming out of a market basket of funds.
Is Fairgrounds Road, is that a city or township?
County road,
County road.
yes.
So are we using Mount Vernon water funds for part of this then?
The water funds will be used only to repay the loan. So we're not going to use any cash from the water. So we're going to take out a $260,000 loan.
Okay.
And so we'll be paying that off at 0% interest. And that could be paid with some of the county money or our money,
Okay.
depending on revenues.
So this is tied into the Mel's neighborhood, does that help them fire suppression? needs?
Yes. So with the computer model, if we had run a 12-inch line up Mansfield Avenue, it would not have fixed the problem. But showing a 8-inch line on Fairgrounds Road more than fixes the problem.
Sounds like it's more of a Mel problem than our problem.
Keep the water flowing up there.
Yeah.
Yes, it would. I would support this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of infrastructure that's aged out. It's difficult to do the replacements because, there's only so many things we can turn off and have water. So this provides a critical loop to where if we do have problems, we can isolate the problems easier, less of an outage. I don't know how many outages you've had in the last 5 years. It's quite a few.
Several. Yeah.
So as we're doing any kind of work or as there's a break, there's been a lot of water outages. And I'll look at Aaron. We like to provide reliable water, and we hate to think about that day. If there was a fire and a water break at the same time, it'd be very difficult to react to. So, other questions?
We also put on
Not so much a question, but I will make a statement.
Norton.
I know in the meeting that I was in with, I think we had 2 township trustees there. That was the primary concern that they brought, was that there were people on the road. Being a transmission line takes care of that.
Yep.
Because there are people that aren't in the city limits that don't want to plug in, and some of them actually do have, they're happy with their wells, or they have new septic tanks that they've recently put in. So this would satisfy both, I guess, and allow us to actually improve our system and allow them to keep their wells and septics without disadvantaging the individuals on Fairgrounds Road. So
Yeah, both facilities will be considered transmission, so we're not asking anyone or requiring anyone to tap in, not planning to charge the service availability fees. So,
If new construction goes in, they're required to tap in.
well, if it's not a transmission facility, so this we're classifying the sewer and the water as transmission.
So the answer would be no.
Yep. And if we need to do any amendments with our contract, Rob and I will work with that. We're also planning to go to township meetings and reiterate that. We've met with the township trustees. I think John was there probably 4 different times, so. Okay, we also need to talk about Norton Street.
Just real quick, would the whole road, Fairgrounds Road, all of it be resurfaced or just?
Yes.
This part, okay.
Yep.
That road gets a lot of traffic, frankly, and I call
Yep.
about potholes. A lot of.
Yeah, so again, when we put this together, the county engineer's office had it slated for asphalt just 1 more year away. And so this became a joint project pretty rapidly. So if there are any more questions on this, we also need to talk about Norton Street, which we added recently. So we're working through the water line for the Heartland Commerce Park. The water line's been installed up to the powerhouse. We were hoping that the development company would just do the project, but they don't want to go really outside the gate. So what's left to do is about $300,000 worth of work. $100,000 of that is outside of the gate. And so what we're asking tonight is for permission to bid and award a project that would be Burgess Street to Pleasant Street. And then that connects, at the end of the day, we'll have a 12-inch water line from High Street to Pleasant Street.
So they need the water line, but they don't want to do the part that connects them to it?
They don't want to work outside the fence, really, or much outside the gate.
How are we paying for this?
This is 100% ARPA funds. So if you have the original worksheet, we allocated funds of city ARPA funds to replace the water system to the park, because when in 2016 Siemens came to us and wanted to fix leaks and shut down part of the system, and we were never able to shut it off until this spring. So the water system inside the plant is in failure. There's metered water, unmetered water, fire system water. It's cross-connected. The billing was a complete nightmare. At the end of this project, each building, each parcel will have its own water meter, have its own sewer and water accounts, and we'll have everything separated. There were multiple master meters, there were sub-meters, there were buildings that were not being metered, and there were buildings that were being metered twice. And it's taken, I don't know, look at Aaron, as long as Aaron's been here to figure this out, right? So we've had teams out there trying to work through this and sort it out. So at the end of the day, we really want a fair way. So each building has its own account, and this is a bit of an economic development project. But again, this is using ARPA monies that we've allocated for this specific project. So if you remember, we put a panel, I think, was it, Terry, 16 people? 18 people. So we had a panel sitting here, and they went through and classified the needs across the city, looked at the strategic plans, the tactical plans, and this was, I think, one of the top 3 projects was getting good, clean water service to this park. It was number one. Yeah. So I forgot to bring that paper. So it was number 1. This is our number 1 ARPA project, and we have the permit from the EPA. We're just ready to do the last piece. Questions?
Would you like this passed this evening?
Yes, please.
And Fairgrounds, if at all possible?
It's up to you. So Norton for sure. Fairgrounds is up to you. We have, for Fairgrounds, we still, the county's had a couple comments on the plans, and then we'll be applying for the permits for the EPA. So we can't go out to bid this week for Fairgrounds Road, but so there's time if you have additional questions on that, or if you want to pass it, then we're ready to go. Either way.
I'm just a little confused. But Mr. Ruckman has 2 committee meetings. One's the Fairground Roads Improvement, and the other is the West End Sanitary. So the Norton Street, where does it fit into that?
We just tagged it on.
To the fairgrounds?
And we've tagged it onto Fairgrounds.
Yep.
We asked for an
Okay,
additional
I just
5
wanna make
minutes for
sure
that,
where we're
so,
at.
Yeah. And then we move on to West End Sanitary Sewer Project.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Trying to keep the water and sewer separate.
That's right.
That's a good idea.
Always a good idea.
It's always good. All right. I'd like to move to adjourn the committee
Okay,
meeting.
we're adjourning the Fairgrounds Road Utility Plus committee meeting. We're gonna move now to the West End Sanitary Sewer Project with Mr. Ruckman.
Yes. Mr. Ball?
Right. Okay. So, again, back to a little bit of our strategic plan. We've had a lot of requests to not forget about our partners and friends in the west end of town. So, as we've rolled through the community development block grant public meetings, Sanitary issues basically came up at every single meeting. I know Jay, Mike, John, Mel, several, yeah, maybe Bruce. I don't know if you were there or not, but most of the council, Amber was there. So this is an issue. This part has aged out. Everybody has a map, so we're not at this point looking at a complete replacement. The sanitary leaves this area at Gambier, so we're looking to start basically at Gambier and Farmers Exchange, and then work over slightly, going uphill, and the areas that are highlighted are our priority areas. So one of the questions I think Mike asked, several of the meetings, people said, hey, what are you doing for us south of High Street? So we're including 3 runs of sanitary in this design south of High Street. Our hope is, we've talked about the US EPA ask. We're hoping to include some of the work south of High Street in the US EPA ask. And again, as we get these designed, there's some other programs we can keep working toward. So the things that are north of High Street would be included as a part of the CDBG project. And then, but we have to build part of the work south of High Street to make that even be able to start that work. So we've done a lot of surveys already. This would be getting us into design with our friends with civil and environmental consultants. Questions?
So just above Arch, what would run between it, behind all those houses, that's not connected into South Adams?
Yeah,
Anywhere?
there's a pump station.
There's a pump station there.
Yeah. So that run of pipe would be, we would look at using that or replacing that pump station.
Okay.
That still has to be evaluated. So yeah, it looks like it's off by itself, but then it leaves there by force main. Okay. So there's no way to gravity out of there. And it's possible that next block, depending on the slopes, may have to go to the pump station, because this area was put together in a time where all the rainwater went in the sanitary. So the sanitary just kind of was there, and then the rain would flush it. That's not allowed anymore, and that's why we have to do a lot of, Aaron's crews have to do a lot of manual flushing, a lot of cleaning. Then that leads to backups, and when we're using a jet in a small pipe, and it's not pretty sometimes.
Yeah.
We just put it that way.
So-
You can visualize it.
So on the west end, the city's already expending resources to go flush lines.
Yeah, I don't.
And
Yeah, I
then
don't.
there's not much there's probably no backflow on any of those, so when you're flushing lines with high pressure hoses, it's just going.
As a matter of fact, what's the degree on some of that? Like it sits at less than 0?
Yeah, some of this
You
is.
gotta flush it uphill.
Uphill?
Because.
Yep. Yeah, some of this is actually running uphill at 0.002. Even, and then 0.002 positive slope isn't much different than 0.002 negative slope. So it's not moving.
Faces the solids.
Yeah. And then every intersection has a connection where where all the street drains went to the stormwater, and those are buttered up with cement, and they're jagged and rough, and it's in poor condition. So the idea is, if we look back to our project in Mel's neighborhood, because he's got an awesome neighborhood, we've got smooth new pipe. We've reduced our sanitary overflows. Aaron and I were just working on our success report to the EPA about that neighborhood and how less rainwater is going to pump stations. So this is just sort of prioritizing the next neighborhood. Questions?
How much and how are we paying for it?
So again, this would be in the order somewhere between 75 and 100,000, and this is in the utility budget, with the goal eventually of getting some grant funds for construction. So this would get us queued up for having the design done, having it approved. So
I would love to see this done, just because this was actually one of the first things that I heard about after getting on council. The meeting down in the park, and I had one of my neighbors from just a couple of streets over actually come to me and say that they had backup issues, and he had wanted to know what they needed to do to actually get the lines flushed. So, and I didn't know at that point in time, so that kind of sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole as far as, you know, not only what he had to do to actually get the lines flushed by his house so that it drained correctly, but on top of that, the resources that we were expending and what caused it in the first place. So this is actually really exciting to me that this
So
will be getting done.
How much are we spending on all the flushing that we're doing now that this will alleviate?
I don't know.
50, 80, 100,000 a year? Count personnel and time?
It's not that much. I mean, a lot of it's the sunk cost. You know, you have the truck, and
Right.
it's not a huge amount of labor, but a lot of it is the opportunity cost of what else is not
Right.
getting fixed.
Right.
If they're doing that, then we're not getting to, because it takes a while to set this up, and then so say you're 200 feet into jetting and there's a water break. Well, you can't just drive away. You got to reel everything back in, and so your opportunity cost there's a lot of other things that aren't getting done. The other issue is we hit 22 million gallons a day at the wastewater plant when we had the 5 inches of rain. So this is clay pipes, there's little gaps, there's cracks. If we don't continuously work on tightening up these pipes, the EPA is going to make us spend, if we build an EQ basin, a water quality basin to hold stormwater, those are ridiculously expensive, and we definitely don't want one. So this is going to cost more than the equivalent savings just in the neighborhood, but from a bigger picture of the opportunity cost and the savings of when we redo the wastewater plant, if we can avoid taking in 22 million gallons in a day, that's electricity, that's smaller pumps, that's better treatment. So just want to avoid overflows anytime we can, because we can only go, 12? Is our max for treatment? Yeah, so our plant can only treat about 12 million gallons a day, but that's only for a few days. So once we go over that, we're discharging partially treated sewage. And we don't want to be in a habit of doing that.
So that 5-inch rain brought 22.
22 million was our day. So you're getting the grit, you're getting the solids, and that's it. You're not,
Right.
it's going out, most of it's going over the weir at that point. And it's all hands on deck. That's a lot to keep everything. You get a tennis shoe stuck in there, it's a bad day. Things fill up.
Forgive me, this may be beyond the scope of this particular
Yeah.
project, which I am in favor of, but you said that we're not supposed to be running stormwater through our sanitary sewer, but we have parts of the city that are still doing that, or you have leaks in your sewer, and so the water's infiltrating. I misunderstood, I guess.
So this area was separated correctly, but that's been more than 20 years ago.
Okay.
So the concrete plugs that were put in to separate it, those crack. It's clay tiles, so you have a bell and socket type of design. The storm system's not great, and people, the laterals going to the houses have spaces, so you're getting quite a bit of rainwater / groundwater into an old system. So
Okay.
With it cracking,
So it was designed
breaking.
to keep the stormwater out, but it's just failed over time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that would have been, like I said, it's probably more than 30 years ago they would have done the project. So even a brand new sewer, eventually it starts to take
You
on water.
have to replace, okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you, I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. And then we do look at liners, but in this case, with the slope of it, putting a liner in, you still would have to flush it. So this would be a removal and replacement.
Any other questions?
I'm confused by the $75,000. Doesn't sound like a big number.
That's just for design, right?
Yeah, we'd be over, so I think our limit's 75, so we're gonna be 75. We're not gonna do everything. So part of the success of this is a couple years ago, we had one of our interns do a lot of preparation, a lot of preliminary work. So we're able to use some of that work to save on it. So we'll be over 75, maybe a little bit over 100, but that's our That's where we think we'll land.
That's for the design.
Design, yeah. When we come back for construction, we're probably gonna break this into phases, because nobody wants me to go dig up this many streets at the same time, right? So this will be phased through several years, or depending on the funding. So construction is not near on the future, but it would be, we could potentially have some construction in '25.
All right.
Anybody else? Questions? Would we like this passed this evening if at all possible?
Yeah, if you're up for it.
I tried to pass it last time.
Well,
We would've missed
I
out
didn't
on
have my
this,
maps
so-
printed out last time.
All right, I move to adjourn. Thank you.
We're going to adjourn the Utilities Commission. We're going to move now to Finance and Budget with Mr. Siebel to discuss credit card policy use.
Mr. Tanner?
Seavolt. Ordinance 2024-35 lays out the, establishes a credit card policy for the city, specifically in the Safety Service Office, Mayor's Office, Safety Service Office. It's written in compliance with House Bill 312 from the 132nd General Assembly. Don't ask me when that was, a while back. So I've had a few questions that have come in. Basically, the impetus for this is more efficient means of acquiring smaller items, smaller costs that we have within the safety and the service departments, whether that's conferences, immediate needs for, like, for instance, union arbitrations that we find ourselves in, particularly with the fire department. Their arbitrators require you to pay by credit card. It's just a modern situation that we find ourselves in. We are seeing that more and more, that vendors for these smaller dollar figures expect to be paid by a credit card as opposed to waiting for a purchase order or a check to go through. So as it is 2024, fastly approaching 2025, we feel as though it's about time. Again, this legislation was written with those specific parameters set forth by the Ohio Revised Code in mind. So as we establish this specifically in the policy in Section 2, it lays out these three things: is purchasing of equipment and supplies, the payment for training programs, seminars, and conferences, and payment for necessary administrative expenses such as office supplies and communication. Then we look at some of the things that who are the authorized users. That would be the mayor and the safety service director, or authorized users by the safety service director. That's essentially all the department heads on a as-needed basis through written requests. And again, they have to write those requests based on those three categories for authorized expenses. And then under Section 3 and Section 4, you're looking at, and this is again with that policy, that ordinance and the attached policy, you're looking at how the procedure for submitting those receipts and the procedure for issuing the card and all the details in there. So there is a role for the city auditor in this, and there's also a compliance officer, which would be named, who is not an authorized user, or the finance agent, which would essentially be the auditor. So there's essentially a third compliance officer to kind of keep triple controls as opposed to just dual controls. And that would be appointed by the mayor. We've essentially established that would likely be the city treasurer. So keeping, and again, there's criminal penalties, that are attached by the Ohio Revised Code. And then coming back to some of the questions that I received from Mr. Severns, or Councilman Severns, sorry. Mr. Severns was your father. So let me go ahead. Some of the questions that were asked were under this credit card policy. Does it stop you from buying any items, which is, for instance, like alcohol or candy or anything like that? So some of these things aren't in the policy, aren't explicitly excluded. But again, I come back to it does explicitly itemize the categories, which can be can be used for what the card can be used for in Section 2. So, like for instance, the police chief would have to really convince me that alcohol would be a reasonable use. Okay, so that would be some real lobbying on his part, or like candy or anything like that. So when you see those kind of expenses show up on a government credit card, that's typically because these are travel cards, and this is not a travel card. So even if we do pay for a conference or a training with this card, the card is not going with the individual. The card stays in the office. So they're not going to be tempted to be like, oh, Charleston Chew, don't mind if I do. That rhymed. You're welcome. That one was free. Next one I charge. All right. So, and then of course, all of that is laid out in how somebody would have to turn those receipts in and how quickly that PO would have to be in place in order to make sure that no interest is borne on that. And then one of the questions again was is the credit card statement resolved monthly and by whom? Again, in 3 and 4, it lays out how quickly that must be in place. All of those things have to be already agreed upon budget. You have to have this in your budget. You can't just say, oh, well, I want to go to this training. I don't have it in my budget. Swipe free money credit card. That's not how that's going to work. Let's see. And then there was a question on rewards. So in Ohio, the government credit cards can accrue rewards, not awards, but the benefits have to be directed to the government entity rather than individuals, of course, and this is roped up in that House Bill 312, and it mandates that those benefits have to be reported to the Ohio Auditor of State. In this policy, it does explicitly say that the city auditor, will give an annual report to council, and then would obviously in the annual report to the Ohio auditor, this would be a part of that report. So it would essentially be when we come in and choose whatever card that we want, we'll figure out what those rewards are. There's also the option of just not having rewards, which I think would probably be the best option, simplest. So
That muddies the water. So how does this work with the purchase order process?
well, it's essentially the same way. This, so I'll just pick a situation. So if you're wanting to go on a training, the training costs $500, and you need to pay for the training immediately. So you pay for the training now. You go ahead and get the purchase order process going. That takes longer than just paying, online with the credit card for the training. You know that you have $500 in your training budget. Okay, so you're taken care of as far as name the acronym organization you're going to for this training. But meanwhile, back here at the ranch, we're settling all the paperwork and getting that taken care of while you're at the training. When you come back, if you have any other expenses or invoices or whatnot, you can get those settled. At that point, we are not paying that vendor. We're paying PNC or Visa or whoever that is. And that just simplifies that process. So it makes it a little bit more efficient, and we can anticipate the monthly bill. We can anticipate the time that's going to come in. It just simplifies and makes that process a little bit more efficient.
You're saying the card stays here.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody goes to a conference and they're going to have a meal, that's not included in this.
Yeah,
credit
that's
card.
separate. That would be like the per diem thing that we've already established that policy prior.
They just turn in their expenses after they get back.
Sure.
For reimbursement.
Yep.
They don't use the card.
Yeah.
So if the conference, which some I'm going to, actually includes certain meals, and
Yep.
that would just be part of the overall
That would be part of the
registration for
package.
conference, yeah.
Yeah, but that's in the per diem policy that we previously.
Sure. Well, and if you, as an individual, if you go in and you have a department-based per diem, that is separate from this as opposed to tacking that on for some independent registration. And that's just, again, a small, that's one example of what this could be used for. I imagine that it will likely be mostly used for training and conferences and whatnot. But if there are other instances where, I don't want to just hypothetically pull one off the top of my head, but if there's safety equipment that needs purchased, in an immediate term, or if there's an opportunity to get those kind of things, I don't even want to throw out a hypothetical, but that option is there. For instance, I personally, with White Hat Technologies, working with Square, I personally paid for the Hiawatha Water Park website for folks to go on and buy their membership. And then we had to go through the process of working with White Hat. We had to go through the purchase order process, and that took us a while to get, me reimbursed. All right. I believe the mayor paid for the YouTube live stream. Yeah, Restream. So there are a lot of subscriptions, and we see this across all the departments, is when we need these subscriptions, when we need these, small things that are a couple $100 here, however much, we have to jump in and do it independently because either, the company doesn't want to check, or they don't have the time to wait for us to get through the process and then send them a physical check. Or, and some of them are so young, they're like, what is this paper? So can you do this? I don't know what this is. They just assume that you're going to pay with a credit card. I mean, they just send you an email link that has a credit card or even PayPal or, Google Pay. So it's one of those, it's just a modern means of efficiency that I think that the city's just ready for.
I think it's about time the city has that opportunity.
I will say, coming from the county, each independent office holder at the county has their own credit card that goes with the office holder. And they have a certain limit, and they have a county credit card policy. They follow those rules, and they report back to the county auditor, and it functions essentially the same way.
Yeah, we had, I can just speak on behalf of officers, not total staff, about 350 staff members. But, we had 188 officers across the state that all had individual credit cards with $2,500 or $5,000 limits, and phone cards and gas cards with very few problems. And policies are there to solve those problems if they occur, because in today's world, we're electronic. And I don't think that any government employee, unless it's an emergency, should have to be paying any bills or anything with their own personal funds, if there's an avenue to have a credit card to take care of it.
And I do want to point that out too. This is separate from like a gas card or a procurement card or anything like that. So I cannot fathom a world where this card is being used to pay for a tank of gas or anything like that.
I agree with Mike. I think this is the way to go for efficiency in so many ways, so.
This is something that auditors look at very closely when they come in to do an audit. They want to
Once you adopt this council, then I'll have to send the policy to the auditor's state office and let them know that we have this on file.
Yeah, they watch that pretty closely.
Any other questions? Great job, Tanner.
Okay, we're now adjourned. We're in recess until 7:30 p.m. We begin the legislative portion of the meeting. If anybody out there wants to speak, the city council will need to see the clerk and fill out the form. Now 7:30 PM, going to call the August 12th, 2024 legislative session of City Council to order. Mr. Hill, please call the roll.
Mr. Mahan,
Here.
Mrs. Woods,
Here.
Mr. Ruckman,
Here.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mrs. Seval,
Here.
Mr. Severance.
Here.
Is there a motion to excuse Mrs. Skinner? She sent an email saying she's on the road working.
I would like to excuse Mrs.
Second.
Moving in second, she be excused. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. She is excused. Invocation this evening will be given by Marvin Hopp from the Brandon Baptist Church. Please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the pledge. Pastor?
Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this evening that folks can gather together in their city events to be able to share in these moments, to know what's best for this community. We pray for the council, we pray for the mayor, we pray for all of our city workers, and we ask that you would watch over them. Bless this evening as they deliberate, as they talk, as they share, for the best of the community, for the people that live here, and most of all, guide them and direct them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, on your packets were the minutes from the July 22nd meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'd ask for motion for approval.
So move.
Second.
Then moved and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. They are approved. I see no petitions or communications. In your packet are the committee reports from the previous meeting. And I see no liquor control licenses or proclamations. We do have one person wishing to speak on matters of city concern. That's Tom Wise. Please come to the podium and state your name and address. And you have 4 minutes. Make your comments. Mr. Wise?
This is Gary.
What's that?
Okay, my name is Tom Wise. I'm a Vietnam veteran. In Knox County, there was 14 young men killed in Vietnam. And I'm going to remind you of their names. Captain Peter Hayden Chapman from Centerburg. Danville is PFC David Lee Carey. Danville Spec 4 Stephen Lynn Colopy. And Sergeant Daniel Hively from Danville. From Fredericktown, Corporal Robert Lester Carter, PFC Walter Lehman Ensign Jr., Sergeant Guy Buddy Fern, Sergeant William Lawrence McMahon, and from Mount Vernon was PFC Roger Dean Allgaier, Corporal Wayne Eric Garvin, First Lieutenant Dennis Ray Kennard, Sergeant Harlan Nathaniel Lockhart, SP5 Billy Lee Peters, and SP4 Richard Lewis Still. I had banners made for all 14. Those banners were displayed in Veterans Day 2023 and Memorial Day 2024 for a month each one of them. Because of my age, and especially Agent Orange, and I have no idea when God's calling me home, I want these banners displayed in 2025, 2026 Memorial Day, preferably where they was displayed before, which was on South Main Street. I have been refused because Experience Mount Vernon says they will not reserve spots ahead. And I've got a petition. I have several hundred names. I will be speaking at Fredericktown City Council 2 weeks, And I will also be at Centerburg. One of the ladies, Mrs. Carpenter, her brother was Colopy, and she will take care of Danville. I have collected these names. I will be going to Tomato Show, don't get old because you can't remember anything. The Centerburg Old Time Festival, and every place where I can find it to get this petition, have people recognize these guys. I don't do it at this. I just think it's stupid that they won't book them ahead for 2025 and 2026. I'm figuring that it will cost $3,000. I have the $3,000 available to book ahead. I'm only asking you to have some influence on Experience Mount Vernon to change that policy. The only reason they've given me is they want everyone to have the opportunity to be on a banner. These banners are special. They're super special because they gave their lives for this country. You got any questions?
Did we, this is more for the group.
Pardon me?
I agree with you. Have we ceded all control to Mount Vernon Experience for our flagpoles? For our, not our flagpoles, but for our city lamp
They
posts for
run that
hanging of banners?
program. They run that program. They decide what banners go up there. That was from the very beginning, I believe, when the streetscape was done back in 2004.
Okay, is there a reason we can't revisit that as council?
Can if
Because
you like.
that's completely wrong.
Yes.
Because I can, not that there's not other important things, but I think it's more important that we show some respect for veterans that have especially died in combat. But at the same time, Veterans Day or Memorial Day, those are national holidays specifically for that. I think the city should revisit that and renegotiate, or just, there are polls.
I'm confused by the cost. If you already have the flags, what is the cost?
Well, the cost is, the flags are already, or the banners are already made. The cost is to put them up, take them down, and store them. Put them up, take them down, and store them.
Okay.
And then when I originally did it, it was about $200 per person. So I'm figuring $300 or $3,000 to do the 14. And I only want them up Memorial Month.
Just to make, sir, thank you for your service. And as a fellow veteran, I think it's important for these kind of things to be recognized. So I just want to say that. Help us understand. They haven't told you no, that they won't fly them in 2025. The date for application just hasn't occurred yet. Is that correct?
They will not allow me to book ahead. I've been arguing with them
When does
for
that?
a year now.
Again, forgive my ignorance of the process, but when do you have to apply to fly a banner in 2025?
I don't know. I would guess 2025.
Well, I mean, you did this in 2023. When did you apply for 2023?
When I originally did it, I did both of them at once. They allowed me to do Veterans Day in 2023 and then Memorial Day 2024. And that's when I started trying to get them to do it. The reason I only want 2 more years is the banners won't look like they're supposed to. And that's, I know I'm not making much sense because I get
I understand.
Unhappy. But
If I may, if you have an opportunity to come back in and talk to the Safety Service Office, I can kind of facilitate a conversation with experienced
when
Mount
you
Vernon.
want to see me,
That sounded like a threat. If you want to come in tomorrow, we can have a discussion, and
Okay.
I'll take care of that.
but I am not going to quit until these banners are flown. I have not went to the internet yet, but I will.
Please don't.
At the end of September, go to the internet, and most of my contacts are other veterans all over the United States, and it's just me.
So are you a member of AMVETS or VFW?
No.
I'm just curious, because I know they would probably weigh in and agree with you also, I would imagine.
They have and I'll leave one for you. They have the copy of the petition, and they're getting numbers or signatures, but I don't know how many they got. I don't know how many the families have got. In order to put their picture on the banners, I had to find a relative of all 14. And I'll tell you right now, emotionally, I will never do that again. Because it just tore me up. I thank you for your time. I'll leave this with you.
I'm of that age of the Vietnam people that were over there, and I have several friends now still suffering from Agent Orange. And it's terrible what's happening to them.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, it
Because
is.
you can be perfectly healthy today, and a year from now, like my neighbor, it's eating them alive on the inside.
Thank you, Mr. Wise.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Council, we're now ready for the legislative portion of the meeting. The agenda was sent out to you in advance, but tonight we have an additional resolution 2024-80 on acquiring an additional property. In addition to that, are any other additions or corrections to the agenda? With that saying, so it's approved by consensus, so we move now to the resolutions. We have no resolutions for third reading. We have one for second reading. That's resolution number 2024-69. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-69, a resolution authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon, Ohio, to enter into contract with Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc. for design of a West End sanitary sewer replacement project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Ruckman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings for resolution number 2024-69.
Second.
Been moved and second for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seavolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severance.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mr. Ruckman.
Yes, I move for the adoption of resolution number 2024-69.
Second.
Been moved and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Ruckman.
Don't believe so. I think we heard all we needed to before. Anybody have any additional questions about that? If not,
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seavolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severance.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-72. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-72, a resolution to donate surplus Mount Vernon Police Department property to other public entities and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mahan.
Sir, I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings. Take resolution 2024-72 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and second for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Rule suspended. Mr. Mahan?
Sir, I move to adopt Resolution 2024-72.
Second.
The move and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Mahan?
Thank you, sir. Chief, appreciate you coming. Got some new radios on the way. They're here being tuned. And then,
Waiting on the state.
and then we're gonna send out our old radios.
Yes, so the new portable radios we have for the officers that we budgeted for last year arrived about a month ago. We're waiting on the state right now to issue the certificates for them for the MARC system to get them on, and they're a little backed up. So all of our patrol officers and all of our portable radios in the police department will be the new ones, which leaves us 37 radios that we're currently using that we will no longer need. The radios we have right now are at end of life, but that being said, some of the smaller departments and some of the probation officers have indicated that they would like to have some of them to augment what they have in their stocks already. We looked at trading them in, and the trade-in value for each of these portable radios was next to nothing. I think they were going to give us $100 a piece for them. So we thought it better that we could help out some of our local county agencies. You'll see the list in there: municipal court, common police court, 911 dispatch, Knox County Emergency Management, Village of Fredericton, and Village of Danville. So all the radios would be going to a county entity. They won't be leaving the county. And we just thought that this was the best way to use these radios to help out some of the other folks in our county that don't have the new radios.
And this is, I think, obvious, but just for get the information out there, you can't go to Amazon and buy this kind of radio. I mean, they have to be.
No, you cannot go to.
Yeah, these rates. So if we want Knox County EMS to when it spread some of this around, because these are going to be tied into our encrypted system.
These are tied into our MARCS system, the
Right.
multi-agency radio system, which is a statewide system. Originally, when we got these radios 8 years ago, they were paid for by the county. County EMA paid for them, but they are a city asset. But the city of Mount Vernon didn't pay for them, but we bought our new radios ourselves. So these are MARCS compatible radios. What makes them special for these agencies is they already have the encryption boards and the encryption codes in them. So they can take them, transfer them over to their user IDs and move on. That being said, these radios, it's very possible in about 18 months, these radios won't be able to work on the system anyway. That's why we went forward with moving to get our own new radios with the upgraded system. So they're working on a patch for a lot of different departments that have these older radios. They're at end of life for us. They don't make the radio anymore. Kenwood doesn't service the radio anymore. We can send it in, and if something's wrong with it, if they have the parts to fix it, they'll fix it. If they don't, they call us back and say we don't have the parts to fix it, and now it's a dead radio. So it really doesn't behoove us to keep these sitting around in a shelf or a closet somewhere. And for like I said, the negligible trade-in value that they were going to offer us for them, our radio vendor was going to offer us for them, it just seems like a better use to see if we can help out some of our sister agencies in Knox County.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-73. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2024-73, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to dispose of vehicles in the police department not needed for public use by the city of Mount Vernon and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Seaval?
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2024-73 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
The roll is suspended. Mrs. Seabolt.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-73.
Second.
Been moved and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seabolt.
Tanner, it looks like we got a Sebring, Cadillacs. Wow, we got a nice selection of 8 vehicles here.
Sure do. I'll let the chief talk about it.
Yes, ma'am. We've done this numerous times. This is how we keep our impound lot whittled down to a manageable number. If you notice, we haven't been up here in the last few months with some vehicles, so they've kind of piled up on us, so we're getting rid of a large group at one time. These are vehicles that have either been forfeited to the city of Mount Vernon or have been unclaimed by their owners for various reasons. We post them for sale on our GovDeal sites. We've done very well with that, and it allows us to utilize the funds we receive for this for other projects.
Great. Any questions?
Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-74. Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2024-74, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to dispose of vehicles in the Water and Wastewater Division not needed for public use by the city of Mount Vernon and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Seabolt.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2024-74 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and second for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Roll is suspended. Mrs. Seabolt.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-74.
Second.
Moved and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seabolt.
Thank you. Now we got 4 vehicles.
We got 4 more. I think we need one of those inflatable tube men
Oh,
on
yeah,
staff
going back
to
and
sell all these
forth.
things. Yeah. Know what the healthcare costs for one of those guys are.
I don't know.
Not much.
We
All
got
right.
vans and a dump truck.
Don't
So
put that on a credit card.
Yeah, yeah. Don't check the credit card statement. All right. So this is from, these 4 vehicles are from the Distribution and Collections Division of the Utilities Department. We're basically doing the same thing we're doing over in PD, except those are coming from the impound lot. These are no longer needed in utilities, so we're going to slap these on gov deals and hopefully get a little cash back and get that money and use it where we need it.
Great.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-75. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-75, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to advertise for bids and enter into contract for the Fairgrounds Road utility improvements and resurfacing project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Ruckman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings for resolution number 2024-75.
I second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman.
Yes.
Ms. Keener. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Absolutely yes.
The roll is suspended. Mr. Ruckman.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we heard from our engineer earlier.
I believe
today-
that we need to
Oh, I'm
move
sorry.
to.
Move to adopt
Second.
resolution number 2024-75.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Ruckman.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, as we heard earlier from our engineer, I think this is definitely a good project, an improvement for our utility, and I would move for its adoption.
Any other discussion? Discussed this earlier. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman.
Yes.
Ms. Keener. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Absolutely yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-76. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-76, a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of Paul Mayville for a 6-year term to the Civil Service Commission and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take Resolution 2024-76 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
The roll is suspended. Mrs. Woods.
Move to adopt Resolution 2024-76.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Woods.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councilwoman and Council. Before talking about Paul, I want to say a big thank you to Chip Wendt, who served on the Civil Service Commission for several years. I think he was there for 2 terms, a 6-year term. No, it was 1 year, one term that he served. It's statutorily set that it's a 6-year term. So he has been here for a while and honorably served, but he is not interested in continuing. He turned in his resignation, but we do have someone who he knows very well and has a great deal of confidence in replacing him, Mr. Paul Mayville. If those of you know who he is formerly from the bank, Park National Bank, and then has his own investment firm. Regular attendee of St. Vincent de Paul Church, and so he's very excited to get involved in seeing how and executing how the Civil Service Commission is going to work. So anyway, appreciate your adoption of this.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-77. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-77, a resolution authorizing and directing the auditor of the City of Mount Vernon to make supplemental appropriations.
Mrs. Seaval.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2024-77 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Seaval.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-77.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seaval.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mrs. Seaval, Council. We do have some estimate or some new revenue coming into the city's treasury. Your items 1 and 2 combined is for exceeded revenues of the fire service contract of our college township. A portion of that, the chief has asked us to allocate some monies into equipment, and then we also need to do some Medicare and Social Security expenditures as well. That would be your first 2 items. Item 3 for the refund from the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. That will go through to the HR department for $6,516.91. And then item 4, coming by the way of the municipal court probation department, they have been received another grant from the Mental Health and Recovery for Licking and Knox counties. This program we have had on a number of years for these folks, and we appreciate the service for which this organization helps support our community here as well. For $35,000 is the grant. And then for the last item, $43.80, the fire department would like to appropriate their dollars for the selling of some scrap metals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Are any of these, for the Medicare and Social Security, this is money coming to the city or going out?
This is money that's already coming into the treasury that was not anticipated.
Okay, so that's coming from
No.
Social Security?
Yes.
Well, it will go out to them because part-time firefighters are not part of PERS.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's coming or going?
It's
going.
going.
So my next question, is this any part of any fines or penalties?
No.
From Social Security?
No,
Okay.
no.
Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-78. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-78, a resolution authorizing and directing the auditor of the City of Mount Vernon to transfer certain funds.
Mrs. Seaval.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2024-78 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Roll is suspended. Mrs. Seaval.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-78.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. I mean, it's been moved that for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seaval.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk about a lot of money.
These are transfers, council. And so what happened here is Mr. Henkel has gone through his appropriations that he has. He's readjusting for some of those salary increases that come along. And so he and I together, we sat down and made this work out. I think that's what he was looking for anyhow. So item 1 from the public buildings and land side of his operations there, we're going to readjust that by $15,000. And then also in the parks part of it, it's going to be a $10,000 adjustment. Keep in mind, there are 2 people in these line accounts that we're talking about because Mr. Hinkle himself has a portion thereof, but the assistant directors are also in this same line account. So this is not all just going to one person. So it's going to be an allocation here. Item 3 for you in the superintendent foremans in regards to the street department. Again, that will be an allocation between himself and his assistant director. And then on your last one for the superintendent there is also in regards to the cemetery is going to be a portion of that as well. And then on our last item, the HR has asked for a transfer. We've got funds that we appropriated early in the year for the Merit System Administrator. That program is not funded directly as it had been, and so the department has asked for those to be redistributed to their department in HR for dues and supplies. Thank you, Mrs. Civil.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-79. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2024-35, I'm sorry, ordinance,
79, sir?
okay, very good. Resolution number 2024-79, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to advertise for bids and enter into contract for the Norton Street Waterline Extension Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Ruckman.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mr. Ruckman.
Yes, Mr. President. I move to adopt resolution number 2024-79.
I'll
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Ruckman.
We got to talk about this a little bit earlier. And, seemed like it was definitely something that was worth moving forward with, so I would call for its adoption.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. The resolution that was added this evening is resolution number 2024-80. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-80, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon to enter into an agreement to acquire, in whole or in part, a single parcel of property located within the City of Mount Vernon and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mahan.
Thank you, sir. I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings. Take Resolution 2024-80 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mr. Mahan.
Thank you, sir. I move to adopt Resolution 2024-80.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Mahan.
Yes, sir. City engineer gave us a presentation. This is a proposed purchase of property, and the primary reason is for flood mitigation. We had an opportunity to ask questions, but we didn't have an opportunity necessarily to discuss. So, discussion on this item?
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. We now move to ordinances. First ordinance is ordinance for 2024-35. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2024-35, an ordinance to create a credit card use policy for the City of Mount Vernon and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Seaval.
Giving it its second reading.
This ordinance receives its second reading. The final ordinance for this evening is ordinance number 2024-36. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2024-36, an ordinance establishing benefits for police and fire supervisory personnel effective January 1, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Woods.
Thank you, sir. We'll give this its first reading, and if I could get a 5-minute committee meeting, I think we can tackle that one.
This ordinance receives its first reading, and that concludes the legislative portion of the meeting. We now move to remarks and administration. Mayor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. President and Council. There are just a couple, I sent you an update on Friday, so I'm not going to rehash any of that. But I did want to respond to Mr. Ruckman's request with regard to the building that collapsed on 0 Gambier, West Gambier Street and by the railroad tracks. I just wanted to make sure to follow up, because you had asked what has been done. This gentleman who owns the property does have some piles of things that he wants to store and or recycle. So they've been there for a while. We have sent the gentleman a notification, so he is aware, and he'll have 30. I think that went out last week, so he's got 30 days to comply with. Okay, you got to clean this up now. So anyway, that's where that's what's been going on with that right now. So. The other thing I wanted to just mention is wanted to say congratulations. We did honor a couple people, volunteers and members of the community this weekend at the Mount Vernon Music and Arts Festival. Kevin Mischie for his years of service to the Mount Vernon community, as well as particularly the festival. And then Mr. Bill Bridges. Those of you in the Nazarene University will know Mr. Bill Bridges for just an illustrious career and one of the pioneer faculty at MBNC, which became NBNU. Both were very surprised by this, and it's just always wonderful to be able to honor our citizens in such a public manner that really brings a distinguished feeling and pride within the citizenry. So very happy to do that. Anyway, I already said thank you to Chip Wendt. okay to say thank you twice. So, Chip, thank you very much. We appreciate your years of service. That is all I have, Mr. President.
Cyrus.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have announced that the city will have City Shred Day. That will be on September 19th. That's a Thursday from 9 a.m. to noon. That's in the Station Break parking lot. It's $10 per load. Each load is up to 5 boxes of documents. We'd prefer those documents. They should all be paper documents and without staples and paper clips and whatnot. This is an opportunity to safeguard your personal information by securely disposing of unwanted documents, any sort of outdated or sensitive records. You can responsibly and securely dispose of those. If you're a resident, a business owner, if you're in an organization or some sort of institution in the city of Mount Vernon, or if you are an institution, if you're in some sort of institution, you're probably not going to participate. But you can gather those documents together and come down and take care of those. And Royal Document Destruction will handle that disposal. This is an off-site document disposal. They are bonded, so you can trust that that will be handled and taken care of. Again, there's a $10 fee for each load, but it's unlimited loads. So we'll take cash, check, credit card. If you're paying with a check, remit that to the city of Mount Vernon, noting City Shred Day. Works pretty much the same way as Cleanup Day, which we've already got our first call about when the fall cleanup day will be. And we're going to work with the Fair Board and basically do the same exact thing we did last time, but we need to establish a date. I felt like I'd give them a little breathing room since the fair. So,
Please repeat the date of the shred.
Shred Day is Thursday, September 19th. It'll be from 9 to noon in the Station Break parking lot or until the bus or the truck loads up, whichever comes first. So, get there and get that taken care of.
Scott. Nothing further, sir. Mr. Ron.
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Sebo.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Ruckman.
Nothing this evening, Mr. President.
Mrs. Woods.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say the Music and Arts Festival was awesome. We couldn't ask for better weather. That was amazing down there. We talked earlier tonight about the city's, whether sponsored is the right word, gas and electric companies. So I have some people going around my community knocking on doors. They came to mine claiming to be representatives of the city and would I like to sign up for their electric. So if you guys could put something together that we could get posted, because I know it is very confusing for people. You had some people contact you. I've had some people in my neighborhood. So I asked this young man if he had a thank you. And he says, oh, I don't know anything about that. I'm young and I'm new at this. So, well, full disclosure, dude, you need one. And he left. But I think it's horrible they're out there misleading people that they're representing the city. So if we can maybe publish it again. I know people get confused by it. Energy, or electric is Energy Harbor. I know that off the top of my head because Tanner informed us a few minutes ago. But get that out there to folks so they're not confused. And I know Mr. Wise left, but I'm going to pretend he's still standing here and tell him thank you for his blood, sweat, and tears that he shed for this country. And the fact that he went out and redid it again to produce these flags and then be told that he couldn't be guaranteed they're flown. $3,000 is ridiculous. We should be willing to put those up for nothing on Veterans Day, for crying out loud. And if we find out that's a no, will you please let me know and we'll work on legislation to make that happen because I appreciate everything he did. Thank you.
I was cornered at Walmart by a person wanting to market.
At Walmart?
Yeah,
Wow.
they do. That
Yeah.
irritates me. I'm just
Wow.
going to say that publicly.
About the electric.
Go to Walmart to shop, not to be.
Wow.
Mr. Miller.
I do have some comments. First, as a reminder to council, I won't be here at the next council meeting. I'll send out another reminder email. I'll be out of state. I sent an email out earlier this year about that, so just so you're aware of that. Today, when I checked my city emails, I've been gone for a week. I was disturbed and not very happy to see that McDaniels has pulled out of the trying to help the city with this payroll issue. I find that very disappointing. There's a 2-page email. I think all council members have got it. I don't know if you all had a chance to read it. Very disappointed with that. I'm not going to read it, it's too lengthy. But as a response to that, just I already sent this out in an email form to the parties that are interested. But I sent out a public information request asking for any and all documents that pertain to late payment of bills, employee salaries not being paid correctly, or withholdings to include healthcare, city, state, federal taxes, BWC, unemployment, union dues, and including and any other withholding not mentioned, and any employee salaries that were fixed. So if we caught something, after it was entered, I'd like to also know that we caught it and fixed it and made some of those employees whole. I'd also like copies of any notices received, requested, payment for bills not paid on time. I request copies of any and all penalties or additional charges to the city for any late or unpaid bills or employee withholdings. And, I saw also in city email today, there was, the city's asking for a BWC one-time forgiveness request because we have a $16,000 penalty. And the city's asking for that to be waived as a one-time. I also request to have a forensic audit of the auditor's office completed so that council can have a full account of what is and has happened in the auditor's office. I'm requesting this information for the last 3 years, including 2024, 2023, 2022. Oh, I mistyped 2022. I'll have to resend that as a 21. And this does not make me happy. Actually, it saddens me to have to talk about this stuff tonight. We've danced around it. We've talked about it now for 6 months since I've been on council. And the mayor's office and city council have tried to work with the auditor's office to fix some problems that we have in city government. Not one time has the city auditor actually brought a solution to the table. The mayor's office and city council have. Unless I've not been included in any meetings or discussions with other council members, at meetings where we're all together, there's not been a solution proposed by that office. And to let the community know, we have city council that represent our wards, or at large, the community as a whole. You have the mayor's office, which is elected. You have the city auditor's office, which is elected. And you have the city law director that is elected. So I read the Knox Pages article today and it just said city. Well, some things are the responsibility of each of those elected office holders. So if bills aren't being paid on time, if bills aren't paid correctly, if there's improper withholdings, that is not the mayor's fault or council's fault or the law director's fault. That falls on the auditor's office. And we've tried to work on this solution. I appreciate McDaniel stepping up and trying to help the city with this issue and problem. It's unfortunate that they've met resistance and have not been able to work through that issue with the auditor's office. I know it's been stressful for them, and it's probably been stressful for the auditor's office. This is stressful for me to even have to bring this up. But that was an agreed upon resolution that was passed by city council. The auditor's office, the mayor's office agreed that that was a solution to follow. City council agreed with that, and we passed that. We actually had a second meeting and discussion about that here publicly, and I thought we were on the right track to have this issue fixed, and evidently we're not on the right track to have it fixed. So I'm also going to be asking the city law director if there's any legal ramifications for not following the resolution passed by city council. Like I said, we've tried to work with this. I myself have called the Federal Department of Labor. I'm sure the city's open to civil liability with these grievances and with employees not being paid correctly or underpaid or overpaid. It opens us up to Federal Department of Labor investigation, quite possibly state and federal tax issues, BWC, healthcare issues, and also the state auditor's office. But at the same time, residents and employees need to speak up also if they have issues. Not everything can be handled by their individual council member or mayor's office. Sometimes individual community members or employees need to make phone calls for themselves and have some personal responsibility on their own to do things. So right now, with how it stands, right now it's probably stopped or slowed at least. The city, we voted to modernize our payroll system to get away from paper and things hidden in people's drawers that other people can't see. And so we were working towards a new payroll system that was electronic. It would have helped not make mistakes. And I'm curious, whether or not what happens to the money for the contract for McDaniels now. Do we still owe them money? So are we obligated to pay them? And if so, where did that money come from? So I'm going to be gone next week, or not next week, but the next council meeting. So by September 9th, if a public information request is not completed and the information needed by the city for NeoGov has not been provided to the mayor's office, I will seek a resolution for a no confidence vote in the city auditor's office and resolution compelling the auditor to provide information for NeoGov or be held in contempt of council. And it saddens me to say this. This is sad. I don't know the auditor personally that well. I've known him over the years. But this is an issue we need to fix in city government. We have a bad enough problem in this country of government being divided and people being divided in our community over national issues. These issues that we're talking about trying to fix are what affect people every single day. We need to make sure that we're paying our employees correctly and appropriately to where they don't owe us money and we don't owe them money. But I don't trust that we don't owe them money or not owe them money. Because I think the only reason we even know what's going on now is because the mayor's office created an HR department a year and a half or so ago. So we actually know if a bill's not paid because they get notified of it. In the past, we might not have known about that, because I'm sure, I'd like to think that this has just started, but I don't know, nor do I trust that. So I think, I guess that's where I'm at. You know, people are responsible for the offices that they hold. But I want the public to know there are multiple elected officials in this community, in the city. And some of these things, these issues we're trying to fix, aren't with council and are not with the mayor's office or the law director. This is an auditor's office issue. And I know there's been short-staffedness, and we've addressed that. And I'd like to think you've got your 2 new employees hired. I'm hoping they've started and that this will eventually fix itself and get fixed. But in the meantime, we've got these grievances to deal with, and we've got these other issues to deal with. And I think to restore some faith in the system with our employees and the community and the people that I serve, I think we need to, unfortunately, I've had to speak out to this tonight. And I wish that I did not have to, because I'm greatly disappointed in government right now and how this has transpired when we have all worked together to try and not get to where someone had, like this, where I'm having to say something tonight. That's all I have to say. It's probably more than enough, but that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Man.
I appreciate, Tanner, the reports that we've been getting from the department heads. Let's focus on the positive just for a minute. We've been getting reports from departments on the engineering department and the utilities department and fire department, et cetera, police department, and I do appreciate getting those. I think that it's helpful. It's helpful for us to understand. You know, people ask us, why is there blue paint on my street? Well, we've read that the EPA required there to be a survey. And so if the public is listening and you have blue paint on your street and on your water meter, you know, there was an EPA survey. I appreciate, you know, we know that there was a route clean out. Not only did I see the paint on the crosswalk on 586, but I saw it in the report. So I faithfully am reading those, and I really appreciate getting those. That's just helpful, and we don't always think to ask those questions, and we don't know to ask all those questions. So that's a good program, and Chief and the people who spend time doing those reports, I appreciate that. I had the same dude come down Delano Street and tell me he didn't, you know, have a, and I was not as kind to him as I should have been, because he kept denying that there was a problem and that he didn't need a, and I told him I'm pretty sure he did need permission. So I apologize for not being as polite as I should have been, but I agree that it's a problem, and if we can escalate this, I don't know what we can do to escalate it, but I'm interested in that. I'm a relator, and one of my strengths is seeking harmony and relating, and I like to focus on the positive, but and I don't want to pile on, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I was the letter that we got, the city got from McDaniel. I'm just astounded and disappointed. And has Mr. Scott received a copy of this letter?
Yes.
Okay.
4 p.m. this afternoon.
Okay. I don't know what the appropriate venue would be, but Mr. Scott, if you want to reply to this, you know, in an email or, you know, at your, however you prefer, if you're interested in replying, to provide some context if you want. But I'm just, that a city department would, I don't know the best word to use, but would obstruct. It's disappointing. And I agree with Mr. Miller that we just need to get this fixed. Our employees deserve better than this, and we need to get this fixed. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Severance.
I would like to also thank the mayor for giving a key to the city to Colonel Reverend Bill Bridges. There are just a few people that I put on the top shelf, what I call, and he's one of them. He's a very good man and has been a great citizen for our country. So I appreciate him very much. And Mr. Miller, thank you for those words. I would ditto and second everything you said tonight. This bothers me a lot that we even have to go here, but we have had to do that. And, you know, trust is a big thing. People trust us to do our work, all of us. And when that trust is tainted, it's not a good thing. And so I really hope we can see I hope that we have a really good report come back on all this stuff. I'm not anticipating that based upon everything I'm seeing, and to see McDaniel CPA pull out is not a good thing. So I'm just, this bothers me. I'm like Jay, I'm a harmony person. I want people to work together, and when that doesn't happen, life gets out of balance, and it doesn't work well. And we cheat the people of the city, and maybe specifically in this case our employees, and that is not good. So we've got to get some resolution here. Thank you, President.
Thank you for the media for being here this evening, Cheryl, and people that reported from online. That being said, I call for adjournment.
So move.
Second?
Okay, move to second, we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We are adjourned.